rugged trail into a winding sheet of white. My friend John and I had been trekking for hours. We were deep in a forest far off the usual hiking routes, a place which was only known for its grim history. An unfortunate accident during Civil War transpired there. A unit of Confederate infantrymen were stationed there when their gunpowder caches caught fire. Many soldiers were blown up and cried in agony for hours before dying. Rumors were that you could still hear their screams in those lands. As the light faded and the sky darkened, we set up camp near a steep cliff. The wind howled through the branches, sounding almost like voices. We didn't say much as we ate, but there was something in the air that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I brushed it off. Just nerves, I told myself. This place feels off, doesn't it? I glanced at him, trying to read his face. His voice was flat, but his eyes had the same weary look I'd been feeling all day. Yeah, I admitted. It's like the air's too heavy or something. Could be the altitude, or maybe we're just tired. We both tried to laugh, but it fell flat. Something wasn't right. As night fell, I found myself staring into the darkness, waiting for... what? I didn't know, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I must have fallen asleep. But sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up with a start. My body jolted awake like someone had shaken me. The tent was freezing. The fire outside had long since died, and John was still snoring softly beside me. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Not faint, distant ones like before, but deliberate, crunching through the snow right outside the tent. I heard a soft scratching sound, not like an animal. No, this was different, like fingers trailing along the side of the tent. I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam shaking as I pointed it at the fabric. Nothing. But the scratching continued as soon as I turned it off, low, methodical. I didn't dare move. Suddenly, there was a loud thud against the side of the tent, like something or someone had slammed into it. I jumped, my flashlight slipping from my grasp. What the hell was that? John was awake, wide-eyed and pale. Before I could answer, the thudding came again, harder this time. The entire tent shook. I don't know, I whispered, but we need to get out of here. We grabbed our flashlights and unzipped the tent just enough to peek outside. The snow was untouched, pristine, like no one had been there. But the sound, those footsteps, the scratching, it had to be real. I could feel it in my gut. I'm getting creeped out, man. Let's just wait it out. I nodded, even though every instinct screamed to run. A few minutes passed in an uneasy silence. Just as I began to drift off again, I felt the sudden, urgent need to pee. I didn't want to go outside, but there was no way of avoiding it. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped into the biting cold. I walked just a few steps from the tent, finding a spot behind a tree. Just as I was about to relieve myself, I felt a cold, icy hand on the back of my neck. I froze. It gripped me hard, pulling me backward. I spun around, the flashlight beam cutting through the night. But there was no one there. The snow behind me was undisturbed, but I knew something strange was there. That's when the beam of my flashlight fell on the ground ahead of me, where there was a massive crevice, partly hidden by the snow. If I had taken just one more step, I would have plummeted to my death. My breath caught in my throat. I stumbled back to the tent. I didn't want to wake John. I couldn't explain what had just happened. I just crawled into my sleeping bag, trying to calm myself. The next morning, John was pale as a ghost. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I had the weirdest dream last night. I looked at him, my stomach nodding. I was outside the tent, wearing some old soldier's uniform, and I wasn't me. It felt like I was guarding something, or someone. I stared at him, my mouth dry. Before I could say anything, we both heard it, a distant scream of agony from deep within the trees. We sprang upon our feet and decided to leave the tent behind, preparing to rush away. But just as we emerged out, we saw clear footprints made by heavy boots, emerging from the forest cover and coming towards the face of our tent. We left that place in a hurry. I don't know what it was, but somehow I owe my life to the spirit of some dead Civil War soldier who was probably looking over me.